Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Paul from For Real. We are here with Troy Bumgardner, keeper from the Denver Zoo. We are going to talk about both sides of private keeping and the zoo side of everything. So, without further ado, Troy, thanks for coming on tonight. Hope you're feeling better.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
So, why don't you go ahead and just kind of give everybody a little bit of your background, and then we'll jump into some questions.
Yeah, for sure. So, like Paul said, my name's Troy. I am a full-time reptile zookeeper at Denver Zoo. I am in the position known as a section keeper at my facility. So I care for 1/5 of the collection we have at Tropical Discovery is the name of the building of Denver Zoo. I'm kind of known as the lizard guy of the building. That's kind of my passion, but I do care for several species of venomous snakes. I am fully venomous trained and have handled dang near every venomous snake that we have in the collection. But yeah, love it. Love every second of it. I'm also a hobbyist through and through. I do have a large collection at home as well, so my life just revolves around reptiles. I absolutely love them.
Awesome. So, for those tuning in, first thing I want to say is we've all seen legislation in many different states right now. So, for those of you that are reptile keepers, even those that are maybe tuning into this that don't really know what's going on, check out USARC, usarc.org, become a member. It's a smart thing to do. If you're not a member and you are a reptile keeper, it's only going to benefit all of us at the end of the day. It is very, very important. For those that don't know, Florida's going through crazy legislation right now. So it is what it is. Google it, take a look at it. But so as far as the animals that you keep and that you take care of on the venomous snake side in your portion of keeping, what species do you work with primarily?
Sure. So the animals in my section, I have a lot of rattlesnakes primarily.
Okay.
Ridge nose rattlesnakes, Crotalus willardi,
Yep.
or Crotalus, however you want to say it. I also have a Crotalus mitchellii pyrrhus, several of those. The white locality,
Nice.
very beautiful. I got approval to breed them this year, so I'm very excited about that.
That's awesome.
I also care for a couple rear fang stuff that's in my section. Phylodryas baroni, Barron's racers.
Mhm.
Also got a Boega cyana that I care for in my section. But then we also have a pretty large venomous collection within the building, including king cobras, Mangshan vipers, several species of Trimerosaurus, Porthidium species, Avophis species, Echis species, Protobothrops, Bothriopsis, Bothriechis, a lot of different species, and I help care for all of those species. Even though they might not be in my section, I still help care for them. For example, today we had a vet exam on a Bothriopsis bilineata, a palm viper.
This one right up here in the top corner.
Yep. I was gonna say, yeah. So we had a procedure with one of them, an adult female, and so I was helping my coworker with tubing it and restraining it for that procedure. But yeah, a lot of different species. Had the opportunity to breed and raise several different species of venomous. Not monocle cobras, Sufan cobras, Naja sufanensis is the subspecies. We've got a little baby one right now that we're raising up, and he's a little firecracker, super cool little snake. I love cobras, absolutely love them. They're probably my favorite to work with, just because they're super spunky.
That's we work with, my internship to get my venomous hours in, Cody has approximately 50 species and about 200 animals, give or take.
Wow.
The pictures that you see behind me here are all at the facility.
That's awesome.
Yeah, there's some amazing stuff there, but probably my favorite cobra there is the forest. We have a Cameroon forest cobra.
Nice,
just super chill, really orange. Absolutely
awesome.
A pleasure to work with. Not like the other ones that are complete crazy, typical forest cobras. But
That's what we have. We have snouted cobras.
Oh yeah.
That our adult female is a puppy dog. She is awesome. She's about 8 feet, and
Oh wow.
yeah, big female snouted. And yeah, I had the opportunity to take her out and work with her a little bit. And she's just awesome. I love snouteds. I've worked with several different individuals now of snouted cobras, and majority of them I've worked with are pretty docile. And a lot of other keepers I've talked to, they say the same. So it's interesting.
I think we have 2.2 left. I think six of them. I think six. There was. I'm pretty sure it was 3.7 at one point, but I think 6 of them went up to Nate at M Toxins to be on the Venom line. But they are. So my progression there, I started off with hatchling or baby Rancalls, baby red spitters, baby Gaboon vipers, and then I kind of worked my way from those into the annulifera, working with like 5 to 6 footers, and then slowly from there into some of the Trimeresurus and some of the other tree stuff that not difficult to work by no means, not anywhere near the other ones, but when you're keeping them in enclosures where they can wrap up around trees, if you're not experienced on the hook, you're not going to do anything. So, and then, through progression in a couple of years now, I've worked the Mambas and, some of the other stuff. Cody produced Western Greens this year and Blacks.
Nice.
So yeah, baby Mambas are off the chain.
Yeah, we have just one female now of a Western Green Mamba. And unfortunately, I haven't had the pleasure of working with her. Our back area just is not very large, and we just don't really have a safe amount of space to work with her, and so we utilize shift boxes for her.
Yeah, that's what we've honestly. We hosted Carpet Fest this past year for 2020 to benefit nidovirus research, and prior to Carpet Fest, which will be a year ago, the beginning of this month, we got some new Doug bar cages that have custom shifts in them. So I think other than Cody pulling some of them Western Greens out pulling the Western Greens out because they weren't in the shifts to get eggs out, I'm pretty sure that there's no reason to take them out now. They have 2 big arboreal shifts. They go in when, Cody always says, when I notice they're in there, I just shut the door, service the cage, open it back up, let them do their thing. You don't have to stress the animal. You don't have to stress yourself, because those snakes, the Western Greens by far out of all of them, them and the Jamesons are probably the worst.
Yeah. We used to have a Jamesons, and that thing was, a nightmare.
Hell on wheels. Yeah, to say the least. So what do you keep at home in your personal collection?
So I've got kind of a wide variety of different stuff.
This is cool.
Yeah. Now Colorado, I'm in Colorado for those of you who didn't know that. But they do not allow the keeping of venomous snakes. And even getting a permit here, there's only like 4 permits within the whole state, and they're all zoos or educational facilities,
Okay.
And so for me, like I mentioned, I'm a lizard guy. I've got a lot of oddity lizards. Really big Ackie fan. So I've got 2.2 Ackies. Nice. Just got 5 eggs from them.
Awesome.
Just last week, so pretty stoked, waiting on eggs for my other female. I've got a Coccyx defensor, little Yucatan spiny-tailed iguana, Mexican spiny-tailed iguana, Chinosaura pectinata. I've got blue tongue skink, leopard gecko, because everybody has a leopard gecko at some point in their life. I've had this thing forever.
Nice.
Same with ball pythons, because everybody has ball pythons. I've had those for 12 years now, 13 years now.
Holy cow.
Yeah, I've had them for a while. They were my first snakes, and whatever. I've got a Woma python. Got a Dumeral's ground boa that I was able to pair up with a female early last year. Produced 11 babies from them, so I still have 3 babies, 3 baby Dumerals. I've got a leopard tortoise, a sulcata. Trying to go through the whole reptile room now,
Yeah, those are stages, right?
Yep. I've got 1.1 Gastrophilus porcina, the keeled-bellied lizards.
Okay.
The
Those are
West
super
African
cool.
species. Oh gosh, I have fallen in love with them. They are amazing.
Yeah, they are
I
very
mean,
neat.
yeah, little tiny tree monitors. You know,
Yep.
that's how I describe them to everyone. They're friggin' awesome. Um, but I think that's everything.
That's
Yeah, a lot of different stuff that I've
yeah.
acquired. I used to do shows and birthday parties, so
Okay.
I was acquiring random things here and there, and that's kind of where all the oddities came from, and now I'm getting more into the, if I can't get it at work at the zoo, then I get it at home type
Yep.
mentality. Um,
Right.
so if I go to my boss and I say, hey, let's get some, Cockritz defensors. Let's get some Yucatan spiny tail to go on us. He's like, well, no. And I'm like, all right.
All right, I'll just get them at
Week
home.
later, bought them at home. Yeah. So
That's great. So,
yeah.
we all, as keepers, so again, I have a job outside of the reptile industry, so I'm not like your typical, I breed this, I breed that. So I was licensed in Florida to keep reticulated pythons. I've worked with big snakes for a long time. So we had retics and berms. We produced a really nice clutch 2 years ago. Florida started this whole law thing off in 2020, the beginning of January. So by mid-March, I was so burned out by hearing all the negative stuff. We just, I sat down with my wife and my kids. My wife and my kids are a solid part of what we do with reptiles. And we all have our own animals. We all have our own, niche. And, I generally take care of the feeding and the bad stuff. But, they all have picked their own animals. So we do reptile shows together. We did in New York, we did educational shows, as a group, as a team.
Nice.
Which it's, if you look at families, and not knocking any families now, but when mom and dad both work, nobody's ever home. So what do you do together as a family? I've always loved reptiles. So, we just instilled that in the kids as they were little, so that this way we all had a part of it, and it made for something for us to do as a family. So it's kind of carried through as we go. So, before they passed the CSP law, we all sat down and decided, hey, we're going to go ahead and move out of the retics, because we were afraid that if they passed that, it would be like, hey, you live in Florida, your snakes are worth this much money, but I know you have to get rid of them, so I'll give you pennies on the dollar, because if you don't sell them to me, nobody's going to, you're stuck. They're going to take them. Yeah. So we decided to shift to ball pythons, because we like breeding things. Not that we're doing it for a business or to make money. I really could care less about that, but we enjoy the whole cycle of doing everything. So, we got all the ball pythons, and we have some boas, and my youngest son has, I think she's probably close to 8 or 9 feet, maybe yay big around. Dumeral's boa, female.
Oh, nice.
She's enormous.
Yeah.
Scariest snake I've ever fed.
Really?
Yeah, she's crazy.
Wow.
As soon as she knows there's a rat coming, like she's bitten onto herself. She's got the worst feed response. So yeah, so it's cool. But as we all keep these animals in the private sector, I don't think people really understand the ramifications of what can really happen as far as laws go. And when we do things like I mentioned before we started recording, and I've always been a huge supporter of some of these reptile guys like Brian. And when you look at what happened yesterday in the state of Florida, and then you look at the video that he released today, the caption is, I think, almost got hurt by my 20-foot python, and the caption is like him cut out, like falling on top of the snake. First of all, it's a bad Photoshop, but I'm sure it was meant to be that way. I'm sure it wasn't meant to be like perfect. I'm sure it was just meant to be like, hey, this is the clickbait to click on the video. But I don't think people really realize just how much is being watched and what we do. And it doesn't matter what state it's in. It makes it look bad for us. So you being a part of the zoo field and a part of the private sector, what is your take on some of these laws that are being passed?
It's very interesting, and it brings up some really good conversations. And a couple of my coworkers sat down today because I was reading through, the legislation, and we were talking like, hey, what do we think of this? And the hobbyist side of me is like, dang, a lot of people don't realize the animal production that comes out of Florida. The amount of green iguanas, the amount of tegus, the amount of berms, the amount of retics that come out of Florida. And because of this new legislation, we're going to see a huge hit to those captive populations, or availability of those animals, which is probably going to, cause a spike in prices. Green iguanas are no longer going to be, $20 at PetSmart or whatnot, and it's also going to affect, a lot of people's jobs out in Florida, that are sole iguana breeders or sole tegu breeders. That's a huge issue there. Yep. But also, to me, I have very strong opinions when it comes to how we keep animals in the private sector, in the hobby, in regards to animal welfare. And I believe that, and let me clarify, animal welfare, not animal rights. All right.
Yeah,
I know there is a gray area there with some people. And my belief, or my opinion, is that we should be doing everything by these animals to allow them to display every natural possible behavior. Right.
100%.
And for me, I kind of have a big ethics issue with the large constrictors. Because there are definitely some keepers out there that do it right, for sure. But there's a lot of keepers out there that, make these justifications when keeping large constrictors, or iguanas as well. Me being a lizard guy, I see a lot of people that do not properly care for iguanas, right? And iguanas used to be extremely popular, still are pretty popular, and easily available, easily attainable. And so for me, looking at this legislation and looking at the potential restriction on availability could be a positive thing, because it's going to increase prices. Whereas, a green iguana might have been $20. Now it's $100. And people are going to look at this more of an investment rather than a pet, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And, a reticulated python might have been, $100 or whatnot. Now it's $2,000. People are going to say, oh, okay, I'm buying this animal. This is an investment. I'm going to make sure I can do everything possible to do the research on how to care for this animal and properly care for this animal. So I see a plus side there. And I know there's probably some people out there that are going to give me a ton of flack for my statements here. And again, this is all opinionated. This is all hypothetical, theoretical. But I'm just going to get it out there to potentially give other people's perspective, And so for me, I could see some positives coming from it. In the overall scheme of our hobby with these animals, right? The other side of it too is that oh dang it, I had a train of thought. I just lost my train of thought.
I do that all the time. That's what happens when you have kids.
Oh gosh, yeah, I've got a 2-year-old at home, and yeah, I totally get it. But what was I gonna say? Anyways, I'll kind of touch on the other side. Me being in the zoological field and more of the science-based field, the ecologist in me is saying, well done.
Yeah.
Not that I necessarily 100% agree with that, but No,
I know what you mean for sure.
Yeah, we know what Burmese pythons have done to the Everglades. That sucks. We know what green iguanas have done to the West Indian Islands and South Florida and all that. They're decimating the delicatissima, the lesser Antillan iguana population. They're inbreeding with them, which that's an endangered species, which is horrible. They're taking over the environment. Other, iguanids, tegus wreaking havoc, so to potentially see the limited availability of these species decreasing the opportunity for these animals to come into the wild or be released in the wild, potentially a good thing as well. Now, gosh dang it, I had I remembered it, and I just lost it again.
Well, let me touch on the tegu and the iguana part real quick. So one of the things that we've, go ahead. You got yours.
Okay.
Go.
Yep. I got it.
Yeah.
But what also, you know, and the bad side, because I wanted to touch on the bad side of this now, because what people don't realize that this legislation is also a stepping stone, right? If they can pass this once, they're gonna do it again, and they've already talked about doing it again.
Yep.
And people might look at this and say, "Oh, I'm in Colorado, right? This is not going to affect me. I'm not a tegu keeper. I'm not a large constrictor keeper. This is not going to affect me." Well, you know, yes, it will. It will in the long run. You know, what if I decided 2 years from now I wanted to get a reticulated python? They might not be as available as they were, you know, 2019, 2020,
Yep.
right? This also might, you know, lead to more bans within Florida, within other states throughout the U.S. that is going to make our hobby, you know, very restrictive. And we kind of talk about that at the zoo all the time. You know, what if, you know, zoos and aquariums could only get certain animals, right?
Yeah.
Could only acquire certain available animals because there are no breeders. There are, you know, importation bans or you know, borders are closed, or zoos and aquariums decide they only want to, you know, go through which they already kind of do, ethically sourced breeders and whatnot, and only acquire captive bred animals. Then you're going to go to the zoo and you're going to see a ball python, a leopard gecko, you know, all of these animals that are established within the pet trade that are easily obtainable, right?
Yeah.
And so right now we have this wide diversity of animals that we can select from in the hobby. But if they keep passing more and more of these laws, it's going to come down. Okay, you can only keep a leopard gecko because they have no possibility of surviving in Colorado. I mean, not many reptiles do, non-native, you know, in Colorado, but you know, that's my point is
so we look at that exact thing. So we're talking about a meeting that Florida Fish and Wildlife had yesterday. I wish I could have gotten on to sit through it, but unfortunately I was at work and couldn't do it. So one of the things that they showed was a map of Burmese pythons from, I guess it was like 2011 or 2012, where it shows that they say Burmese pythons can live all the way up into Maryland. If anybody knows anything about them, will never happen. I live in Orlando. They're not here because we're central and the temperatures here. I mean, 3 weeks ago, it was in the 30s. And fast forward to today, it was 86. So, you know, you have that. People don't understand how a Burmese python is. That variability in temperature immediately causes an RI. The snake that goes into a nosedive, it just dies. There's no coming back from it unless you medicate it. If it's in the wild, it's not getting medicated. So, but back to the iguanas and the tegus in South Florida, we're looking at a population of animals that have been here since from my understanding and other people in this industry, since the 30s and 40s.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So they've been established. So 2 years ago, when we talk about legislation and people saying, "Oh, I live here, it's never going to happen." 2 years ago, they put yellow anacondas in Florida on the prohibited list. There is an actual recording of the Commissioner of Fish and Wildlife being questioned as to, "Hey, you're putting yellow anacondas on there. Why?" Well, we feel that because they're not that prevalent right now in the Florida industry, we feel that they could live here. And we already know anacondas, berms, retics, all these animals we have on the CSP list. We know that if they're in the wild, there's nothing we can do now. We're just going to police it like we are. We're never going to ban those animals. We're just going to leave them there. We're just doing this with the yellow anacondas. Don't worry about it. He has recorded. That recording was played yesterday during their meeting by a phone call. Somebody called and played that. So now fast forward to yesterday, they took the CSP animals that we had, moved them over to prohibited, along with all green iguanas, all color forms, and all tegus and all color forms. Mm-hmm. So we've now gone and said, "Hey, we're not going to do this." So people said, "Oh, it's no big deal. It's no big deal. Don't worry about it." And it is a big deal. And all of a sudden, we lose that. Part of this ban and part of what they were saying yesterday was and I don't know the scientific name, the southern rock python, which has never been found in the state of Florida.
Yeah, I thought that one was interesting.
They said that it's never been found. The reason that they added that was the reasoning behind it was that animal could thrive in a Florida environment. So what that does is now it opens the door up to say, hey, we don't like leopard geckos. We think they could live here. We're going to ban those. We don't like ball pythons. We're going to ban those. We don't like bearded dragons. We're going to ban those. And where does
it's all preventative?
Yeah. Where does it end?
Yeah.
You know, so what I look at is I always look at trying to problem solve things, right? We know my son is 21. He's been to South Florida with friends of his. He said it's amazing. There's green iguanas everywhere. It's crazy. He said it's crazy. Yeah. So we say that we know they're there, and why not turn around and say, hey, you breeders that are breeding these animals, if you're worried about them being in Florida, they said people that had green iguanas and tegus could still breed them, but they couldn't sell within the state. They could sell them out of the state, but could not sell within the state, and they were not allowed to bring any more in, meaning that, you know what, if you weren't smart enough to hold babies back strategically, you could potentially lose all your animals at some point, and that is what it is. But what if you taxed the sales of those animals and said, hey, we're going to tax you an environmental tax, and that money is going to go towards helping the environment and figuring out a way, whether it's, hey, once a year we're going to pay $5 an iguana. You know, you go out, and I hate seeing people kill a Burmese python. I hate seeing people kill an iguana. I hate seeing any animal killed. But at the end of the day, it is destructive to the environment. Yeah. So if that's what we have to do to cut the numbers back, there's ways to do it other than just dropping a hammer and saying, you know what, you just can't keep them anymore. Because guess what? That's not going to fix it.
Oh, no. Yeah. That's what me and my coworker are talking about, you know, this morning is all this is going to do is, you know, one, piss people off.
Yep.
And so there's going to be the development of a black market within, you know, not to say that there isn't, but it's going to be a much stronger black market. Oh yeah, it's going to get way worse. And it's not fixing the problem, because the animals that are already here, you know. Yep. We're not going to make it any worse by releasing one more tegu. I mean, you know, but and to think preventative, you know, that's just not, it's still going to happen. That's the thing, you know. Yep. So
well, it's back to the adage of, again, if we and damn, I hate saying the word tax because we pay enough taxes, but I'll say this, if you, like, my CSP permit was $50 a year, whoop-de-doo. If you turned around and said, hey, if you want to keep these animals, here are the regulations, you're going to be inspected, it's going to cost you $500 a year. Mm-hmm. Okay, if you're breeding animals to sell, then there's your $500.
Yeah.
If you want to keep it as a pet, hey, you know what? We're going to charge you $300, but you're going to be inspected every 6 months. And this is money that'll be generated to go back into the state of Florida, into Fish and Wildlife, and we just don't understand or get that reptile keepers would pay that if they were serious. Mm-hmm. Which would, back to your before, the people that weren't looking at that investment animal, well, those people are going to be gone because they're not going to pay X amount of dollars. And I know right now somebody's going, oh, they're just going to keep it, not say anything. You're right, they are. But those people will get caught, because if I got to pay $500 for a permit and I find out that you have a pair of retics and you're breeding them, you better believe I'm calling my inspector and saying, hey, this guy's got retics and he's breeding them. He's not paying for a permit. That's the way that's going to work.
Cut out the competition. Oh, heck yeah.
It's not even cutting out the competition. It's the fact that we've all got to police ourselves and try to stay above board. And back to what I was telling you before we started recording is I've shifted gears so much in the last couple of years working with Cody and Pia that I look at things now and I see the beauty of the animal. I laugh because, you know, I have ball pythons and we have everything in cages. We don't have any rack systems.
Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah, I'm more than likely going to shift some of these animals back to a rack. They're taking up so much space.
Sure.
But it's cool to be able to see animals, like you said, in their natural doing their natural thing. West African green mambas, viridis, they come from an area where they cross over with gaboon vipers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we at the RPI, we have a very large enclosure that has a pair of Western green mambas that have produced babies, and there's also a gaboon viper in there. The Western green mambas have shift boxes that are 5 feet up in the air. Guess who climbed up a tree and was in one of the shift boxes?
No way.
The gaboon viper.
No way.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
They will climb just like a ball python. If you give them the opportunity, they're gonna check it out.
Yeah, sure.
So if you do that stuff and show your passion, and I think that there's good people and bad people, obviously, and I think if enough of us can push the right way, we can get some of these keepers back on board and back to where they need to be at.
Yeah.
And
I totally agree with you.
I think a lot of that comes, I think we've forgotten about keeping reptiles because of social media. Social media has changed things so much for so many different industries. It's not just this one. Mm-hmm. So many different industries that, we forget back in the day when you had the self-addressed stamped envelope to send out to get a price list, it's like, and now it's like, I want that. I'm just going to buy that off of Morph Market because, man, I can look at it's like being at a reptile show without being at a reptile show, and John Lehman's done such a good job. I love Morph Market, but, he needs to get Venomous on there for sure.
Yeah. We would utilize it at the zoo, We go through king snake all the time.
we need John Lehman. We need a legit platform for Venomous so that, like ball pythons and all the other stuff that you put on there, we have a legit place to go. It's not a bunch of scumbags. Mm-hmm. I hate to say that, but sometimes you end up in that situation. So, so as far as what you guys, as zookeepers, you guys, I'm sure, talk about the private sector and laws and stuff that come down. Your take, obviously, you just went through that. What do you think? Do you think this can change, or do you think what we're seeing is going to be rock solid and just it is what it is?
Oh, it's hard to say. We know that once a bill is passed, it is pretty difficult to get that reversed. Mm-hmm. I think this is the start of something not good for the hobby. We already know that the reptile hobby is expanding at an alarming rate. It is blowing up. And I think that, lawmakers, for layman's term, are kind of worried about that because we're seeing what's happening in Florida, and other states are going, okay, what do we do? How can we stop this? How can we control this hobby? Here in Colorado, I forget what year it was passed, but we have PACFA, the Pet Animal Care Facilities Act, which was implemented to weed out the non-reputable breeders. Mm-hmm. And so you have to have your PACFA license in order to sell to any reptile store now within the state of Colorado, which is awesome, because you do have to pay a fee. You have to be inspected, and it's really cool. And I honestly think that more things like that need to happen within this hobby to control it, because there are those scumbags out there, those dirtbags out there that are ruining it for the masses. We see those videos, or we hear about these animals being released, and that is what's pushing these bills to be passed, is when those people make one mistake or knowingly do these things that are just ruining our hobby. And so I think, education is important. And I think that's, what, we're trying to do through this podcast. And I think we need to bring awareness to this issue and let our fellow hobbyists know, guys, we need to be responsible, because if we're irresponsible with this hobby, it's gonna get taken away.
Yeah. People don't
it flat out is.
If you look at, and I always say this, I love USARK. They're a reactionary tool. They can't be everywhere all at one time. So sometimes you hear people say, well, why am I going to donate money to them? They didn't help this, they didn't have, listen, There's only so many people that can do so many things, and they don't see this stuff. So I always say that we need a frontline group in every state that can be above the bar, can be maybe not necessarily zoologically trained, but be on point.
Yeah, knowledgeable.
And, be able to speak professionally to senators or legislators or whoever they need to talk to, attorneys, about the laws that are being passed. And I always say this, I hate the word taxes, but at the end of the day, if federal Fish and Wildlife were to sit down and say, okay, we could physically put together a permitting system that would allow reputable people to keep, breed, and sell animals. It's different than me just saying, hey, I've got an emerald tree boa and a carpet python right here next to me. Those are just pets. I'm not reproducing and selling to the public. I'm keeping a couple animals. So you have a whatever, like in Florida, we have class 1, 2, and 3 permits. A class 3 permit just says that you can keep the animal. It's on an inventory. You can sell it. There's no inspection. I don't even think there's a fee. Maybe there is. But these things you can do by permitting and taxing, and it's going to alleviate when somebody goes into a pet store and says, ooh, that iguana is really cool, I want one of those. Okay, well, you need to fill out this permit paperwork. It's $20 for the animal. It's $20 for the permit. You're licensed for however, a year, whatever, and then every year, oh, you know what? Never mind. Because maybe that person would get that animal, take it home, and 2 weeks later be like, oh, this thing's nuts. Throw it out the window and it's gone.
Yep.
So I definitely feel like there's things that we can do as a whole in this industry now, because maybe 10 years ago was a hobby. It's not anymore. It's its own industry, one of the fastest growing industries out.
You're totally right.
But I think that there's like, in Florida with venomous, it's 1,000 hours per species. Viperidae, Elapidae, Helodermidae, and Colubridae, which Colubridae and Helodermidae drives me nuts. I can get my Viper and my Elapid permit, but I can't get my Heloderma or my Colubridae. I can handle a mamba that's 12 feet long, but I can't have a beaded lizard or a Gila monster. It makes zero sense.
That is interesting.
Yeah. Even my inspector was like, yeah, that doesn't, I get it, but I don't make the rules. I just enforce them. So it is what it is, but you have to have 1,000 hours. So that's for me, it was like, okay, 1,000 hours. If I did 10 to 12 hours a week, wait a minute, that's a lot.
That is a lot.
It was like, man, in a year, I would have to do 20 hours a week. How the hell am I going to do that when I work 40 hours a week and I still have a family? Yeah. So if there's go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, for me, it's changed since then. But for me to get venomous certified at the zoo, I only had to do 18 hours. And for me, that was a lot. It took me, I think, like 3 months. And that's because venomous handling is not an hour's worth. You're not sitting there playing with this gaboon viper. You open up the door, take it out, put it in a bucket. Take it out of the bucket, put it, it's 5 minutes here or there. So that is a huge time commitment.
People that say you keep venomous snakes or you work with venomous snakes, oh my God, that must be crazy. Nope, it's cage to can to cage, and you're done. You scoop poop, you fill water, you maybe put new cage decorations in. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
So the good thing is with that, the time that we put in, it's not only counted as the physical working time, because a lot of that time that I spent with Cody was, hey, we're going to work this black mamba. Now, normally it's like it does this, and this. So it's maybe an hour's worth of explanations. When I first started, it was, hey, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to put this here. You're going to stand here. If this happens, I'm going to tell you just back up and get out of the room. I'll deal with it. So you learn through, just the first time I worked rain calls, I have a video. He said, listen, they bite everything. Never get your hands near them. They bite the cage, they bite themselves, they bite the hook, they bite everything. And sure enough, I pulled that first box open and it bit the hook, it bit the cage, it bit itself, it bit the hook. And you can hear Cody in the background saying, yep, they bite themselves, they bite the hook, they bite.
Yeah.
And so you learn that stuff, and you know that I know I can do this based on the amount of time. And I put so much time in, and we've done so much together that the sad fact is, it's, you know, I wrote a letter to the governor's office today and said, you know, I've met great people through this industry, and I met Cody and Pia, and I can't speak highly enough about both of them. And working with Cody has been fantastic. He is so detail oriented, and the things that he's taught me are just crazy. So, and it's the stories, you know, 15 years he's been keeping venomous snakes. So, I mean, since he was 15 years old. So it's been a long time of him working with stuff and crocodilians, and, you know, he's been to Africa a couple of times to do training with forest rangers to capture crocs, and, you know, all kinds of cool stuff. So I guess I just look at it like I love the zoo side of it. I love hearing the stories about the alligator farm, and he was the lead, what would it be? The director, I guess, of reptiles at
Curator.
Curator reptiles at Phoenix Herp for a year. So, you know, so it's the good side of it. And I think a lot of people need to hear those stories about the actual keeping of these animals and what goes on in a zoo or behind the scenes. Cause that's what excites me. It excites me to hear you say something like, yeah, we don't have a lot of room, so we use shift boxes. Well, you know what? That's cool, because I think a lot of people don't see that. They think, oh, that's a zoo. They've got so much money, they can do whatever they want. This is so far from. So the stories
not
I
with
heard,
a 30-year-old building.
Well, exactly, and that's people don't realize that. So when you start talking about it and people really get to see into like your mind, you know, like what's a typical day for you when you work? What's your typical day like?
For me?
Yeah.
So like I mentioned, me being a section keeper, I have a specific section of animals that I care for. It's called the bat section. So you can probably guess what else is in it.
Cool.
So for me, my day starts by cleaning both the bat caves. We have 3 different species of bats. 2 species of fruit bats, Seba shorttails and Jamaican fruit bats. And they're within one cave, and then the other cave is vampire bats. So first thing is cleaning them, you know, getting that out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, feeding the bats. But after the bats, then it's into reptiles. And first thing, I'm going around and checking on every animal. And I have, you know, probably one of the largest sections in the building. I have a huge, diverse collection that includes almost every taxa within reptiles and amphibians. And so I am making sure that all, you know, life support systems are on, heating, misting systems, all that, making sure the animals are there and are present for or are accounted for. You know, especially with venomous, I have to get eyes on every single venomous animal when I arrive at the zoo first thing in the morning and before I leave, to make sure that it is there. Because that's a big issue if it gets out, which I could tell you some fun stories about that. But but yeah, so going around checking on everyone, you know, making sure water bowls are full. And then from there, it really depends on what day it is. You know, if it's salad day, then I'm prepping salads for every herbivorous reptile under my care. If it's bug day, then I'm feeding out insects to every insectivorous or omnivorous animal within my care. And then it's a lot of computer work, a lot of paperwork. There's you know, the whole politics side within the zoo. So I've got a lot of meetings because I'm on a lot of committees and programs. And for example, I'm on the behavioral husbandry committee. So I deal a lot with you know, behavioral welfare for the animals within our building and enriching them and all of that. You know, I also have, you know, animals I have to medicate throughout the day. Like I have a big Argus monitor that has some skeletal issues, so he's on daily medications for that. And then, if I've got some free time or I have one of my days as a project day, and that's where I'm doing exhibit maintenance, cleaning, weighing animals that need to be weighed. Like, for example, I'd probably say 90% of our enclosures or exhibits at Denver Zoo are bioactive,
nice.
with live plants and everything.
Okay.
And one of my big passions is exhibit design, because it's very different in a zoo setting.
Okay.
Because at home I can throw a water bowl, I can in a hide and prop it beautifully, and if I don't see that animal, yeah, that's fine. It's good. It's in its hide. It's in good welfare, whatever. But if a member of the public comes by, my Abroni exhibit, my Mexican alligator lizard exhibit, and doesn't see the animal, that's not a good experience for that member of the public.
Yeah.
And so I have to design an enclosure that, one, is, allows that animal to be in good welfare. So it's not stressed. It's, allowing that animal to display all of its natural behaviors, giving all the animal its needs, while making sure that animal is visible.
Wow.
So one example I like to use is I have an exhibit that houses Xenogama taylori, Euromastix yemenensis, Egyptian tortoises, and Trachylepis striata, it's an orange-throated skink. So little shield-tailed gammas, Euromastix species, and all within one exhibit. And if you know anything about Euromastix or Xenogama or Trachylepis, not many people know about Trachylepis, they're very reclusive, hiding in rock crevice species. And so for me, I designed this rock wall on the back that has these crevices that allows those animals to wedge themselves into, but you can still see them. And sometimes just the member of the public seeing that little sliver of a tail makes for a positive experience,
Yeah.
But I have to make sure that sliver of a tail is visible. And so it's a challenge, but for me, it's a very fun challenge. But yeah, back to the exhibit maintenance and everything, and all of them being bioactive. I have to make sure that they're looking good, the plants are thriving, and so I'm cleaning inside glass, cleaning outside glass on a daily basis. And then yeah, like I mentioned, a lot of computer work, because every animal that is within our collection at the zoo has its own identification number. We call it its succession number. That helps us, keep track and log, whatever we need to about that animal. And so I can log its weights, track its shed cycles, track if it ate or not, anything medical related, behavioral related. And then I can look back at that over, the course of, 10, 20, 30 years, to see how that animal has behaved in the past, or when it's laid eggs in the past, how many eggs it's laid. And so I'm doing that on a daily basis, as well as doing all my entries for the day and whatnot. So, yeah.
So that was one of the things that when I first met Cody I thought was amazing. The first time we went for Carpet Fest in 2019, and we didn't really get to talk to him that much because he was so busy. But I had wanted to get my venomous hours in, and I thought, man, this is perfect. That's an hour away from home. He has a ton, and it looked like, hey, maybe they need help. So when I talked to his wife, I talked to Pia, and she was like, yeah, I'll talk to Cody. And he told me, he's like, man, I was so nervous to have you come out because I thought you were just going to be another one of those crazy bro dudes that just wanted to get into this stuff just to get into it. And I was like, no, when I walked through, Cody has a Montaigne room with Bothrechus aurifer bicolor. This is the bicolor. That's aurifer. He has, oh Jesus, now he's going to kill me. He's probably going to kill me when he sees this. So there's bicolor, there's aurifer, there's marchi. There's one more, Ophryachus. That was the other one. And then there's some, not Willard eye, but it's the pricey eye. There's two different species or subspecies of pricey eye. So we did the pricey eye enclosures. We used the foam and cut it down into rocks. And I'll send you some pictures later, but we made rock walls. It looks like the side of a mountain, but that room is always 60 degrees. And the first time I was there, I walked in and I was like, how do you keep snakes in here? It's freezing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you look in these enclosures and they're just solid plants. Like you can't, and I'm like, oh, I see the snake right there. And this one is all plants, but it has a waterfall. And it's like, oh, I see this. So in 2 years, I've only seen one of those snakes ever taken out of the enclosure, because you can use tongs and grab sheds out and clean stuff up, but it's all bioactive. So everything is taken care of in there. And it's an amazing setup. So amazing that after the Daytona Reptile Show, when they got home, there was 9 baby Aurifer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
That's awesome.
Cody was not expecting it. He's like, I walked by, I looked in the cage, and I looked, and he was like this little snake staring back at me. He was like, I was shocked. He said, just mind blown. So when
That's
you
awesome.
see things like that, and obviously we're doing something right, because he put a male in, never saw any courtship, never saw anything, and here there's babies. So obviously,
we did that with Atheris ceratophora.
Okay.
We had 1.1 Atheris ceratophora on exhibit, and one day we came in, and I don't know if you're familiar with the species.
Little bit.
A small species as adults. And the babies, I think they were, I'm trying to remember, maybe 1.6 grams when they're born. Wow. They're a live bear,
Wow.
So small that when we set them up in these holding enclosures, when we misted down the enclosure, they could climb on the droplets on the side of the glass. Yeah. Tiny snakes.
Insane.
Yeah. And we had, I want to say like 3 or 4 of them. And we're like, we pulled the adults. And at this point, this is a an exhibit, bioactive, loaded with plants. We're like, did we get them all? Because they're tiny little snakes. And I'm like, I don't want to stick my hand in this enclosure, because these are, Atheris are a pretty hot species.
Yes.
And I'm like, granted, they're tiny snakes, so they probably couldn't venomate me, but still, I'm like, we'll see if more turn up.
Yeah. And it's funny, because it was, so the bilineata, Cody told me the story. So there's a male and a female in the cage. I saw the male over a 2-year period for the first time about 4 or 5 months ago.
Oh, really?
Male, they stay together all the time. The male lives in a cork tube, and Cody said he only comes out when he's hungry, comes right to the front of the glass. I get him a rat. He eats the small rat and goes right back into the log. You'd never see him again. That's it.
Hey,
the first year she produced 1. They kept that one. Its name is Uno. Nice. The second year produced 16 babies.
Wow.
And then this past year was 17, but in March had, I think, 11. And then in August or September had 7 or 8 more.
Wow.
So the same year, within 6 months, had 2 clutches. So,
wow.
But those snakes are, again, bioactive. They, Cody's like, you see the cues when they're really hungry. They come right to the front, they eat, they go right back to bask. One of the things that people always say, and I want to get your take on this. What's your take on snakes and UVB?
This is a good one. It is a good one. It's a very good topic. Yes. I personally have seen snakes benefit from it behaviorally. We offer UV to our mambas at the zoo, and they actively seek it out. They bask underneath it. Their colors are dramatically different when offered under UV. I am a strong believer that we should be offering UV to every single reptile. Whether it's nocturnal, crepuscular, diurnal, whatever, every single animal will benefit from it. Now, the argument that people make is it necessary? Right? And obviously not. We've been keeping these animals for X amount of generations without UV, and we breed them successfully, which is, whatever, whole nother topic. But the reptile industry, or the reptile hobby, the husbandry side of things is improving. The recent sciences in lighting is exploding.
Yes.
It's so rapidly right now, and I could talk circles around that, but I am a strong believer that we should be putting UV under every single animal, as well as good visible light. That's
Yeah.
another thing that is really making it into the hobby right now. I've actually got just started a behavioral study in regards to visible light with lizard species, but
Okay.
that's another thing that we really should be trying to offer is good visible light. But
Are you talking
yeah,
like UV, or not UV, but like just like maybe LED lights or?
yeah, just supplemental lighting,
Okay.
because when you think about it, all the lights that we offer, if we're talking, in the world of snakes, if we're talking about using lighting as our heat sources, most of your halogen bulbs, if you're using a halogen bulb, is anywhere around 2700 Kelvin to 4000 Kelvin, depending on what type of bulb you're using. And then your UV bulbs are around the 5000 range. But we've got a whole, we're missing a lot of the visible light spectrum. And majority of reptiles have amazing color perception, seeing all the way from the UV spectrum into the infrared spectrum. And when we're not offering good visible light, we're doing a pretty big disservice. And I've actually seen significant behavioral changes when offering good visible light, mainly with lizards, because they're a little bit more in tune with their lighting than well, that we know of, I guess I should say, with snakes. And I did the kind of a trial study with this at home with my Gastrophilus, where I offered him a good visible light, the Arcadia Jungle Dawn LED, right? And I would see my lizards actively seek it out and bask underneath it.
Okay.
Which I'm like, that's weird.
Yep.
These animals are getting nothing that we know of, nothing from this LED. It's not offering UV. It's not offering infrared. It's just good visible light, but they're instinctually seeking it out to bask underneath it, which I'm like, okay, maybe instinct is telling them that this is the perfect spectrum that should be offering them infrared, good visible light, because it's the closest we can mimic to the sun, right?
Okay.
And so at the zoo, I actually have the orange-throated skinks. I have 4 juvenile orange-throated skinks, and I'm setting 2 of them up with a simulated natural photocycle, in a sense, to both visible light and to heat. And then the other 2, I'm setting them up as we would set up any normal diurnal lizard, with a basking spot and UV, and then the lights are turning on at 7, the lights are turning off at 7. But with my experimental group, I have an LED that mimics sunrise and sunset. The color temperatures, so the actual lighting temperatures or the color of the light is changing throughout the day to mimic the sun going up, midday, sun setting.
Okay.
And then temperatures are also doing the same thing, where temperatures are gradually increasing throughout the day, reaching a peak, which is actually potentially too hot for these animals, which we would see in nature potentially, and then decreasing. And then I'm conducting ethograms to see how these animals behave in each setup.
That's
and
awesome.
then I'm gonna, write a paper about it and present it and everything. But, this is my hypothesis is we're gonna see different behaviors, beneficial behaviors, different basking behaviors, increased activity, different foraging behaviors, which in theory, is improving the welfare of these animals, because we're, one of the biggest things in captivity or caring for animals under human care is a lot of our animals live very sedentary lifestyles because we offer them everything they need within this small environment, and so obesity is a huge issue in in the hobby, in the reptile industry. Arthritis is a huge issue that is not usually discussed. And so if we can increase activity through something as simple as photocyclically enriching our animals, if that's a word, why not?
Yeah.
And then if Arcadia and Zoom Ed and what all these guys can jump on and develop a lighting system that we can plug in, put over our animals, offer them everything they need, there you go.
So that is, we have, let's see, there's for the 2 pairs of big black mambas, the cages are 8 feet by 4 feet by 2 feet. They have 2 shift boxes in either corner they're 2 feet deep. They're 18 inches wide. There is no way to remove the shift box if the shift isn't closed.
Oh,
So
nice.
the
Yeah.
shift box has to be closed.
Awesome.
So that otherwise you can't get it out. It has an acrylic top. It has an acrylic front that has a plate that goes over it so they can feel secure. So those 2 cages are for the blacks. The Jamesons, the Westerns, and the Easterns are in a 5 foot tall by 4 foot wide by 2 foot deep with the same type of shifts in each one. So on top of those cages, there's a screen, a heavy screen, like I call it chicken wire, but it's a not screen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's on top. So Cody had the idea when he got him, hey, I want to get those, I think they're Zoom Ed, the HID lights, the 70 UVB, UVA, and heat to put on top of there. I want to see how they work. And they're expensive, but he said, you know what? I want to see what happens. So we put those lights on all those cages. We put the snakes in there, and just about every single one of them, I want to say it was every single one of them, went right to the middle of the cage where the big branches were, laid right underneath those lights to soak up that UV. It wasn't like, hey, maybe they just went there, because it was literally turn the lights on, put the snakes in right to that spot.
Yep.
Like they knew it instinctually. Oh, wow, I've not had this before. I want it right now. Mm-hmm. So, and back with lighting and stuff, it's the same thing. Now, I don't know if you know who Ron St. Pierre is.
Yeah.
Okay, so I had Ron on last week Thursday. We recorded, and he has all of his animals outside here in Orlando. So, but we talked about the lighting systems that these guys are coming out with. It's incredible. Like we've come so far from back in 12 years ago, 15 years ago to
before UV.
These crappy, like, big tubes that, they said, oh, they only last a couple of months. You need to keep changing them to, we have great lighting. And I think from what I've seen now that there's a huge benefit. And, we talk about, one of the things I always talk to the guys about in our group chats and stuff is there's somebody here in Florida. His name is, I don't really know his name, but the business is Da Vinci's Boas, and he's developed a supplement, calcium-based supplement for snakes. And he's been using this himself for 8 years and just started advertising it. And a few of the bigger breeders have purchased it. Guys like Billy from Mutation Creation, starts giving ball pythons, trouble feeders, this vitamin, and immediately they go back on food. They pack on weight. They have no issues.
Wow.
Females that are coming right off of laying eggs, they get right back onto food. They don't lose weight. One of the claims that he has is that doing this for 8 years with his animals, he's noticed that female boas that would normally only cycle every couple of years are breeding every year. And he said, before anybody says anything, these snakes, I'm weighing them before and I'm weighing them after, and their weight is staying the same. They're not losing that weight. It's not beating them up. They look very healthy. They almost look like they did originally before they produced.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's amazing to think, and I've said this a few times to other people, and they're like, I don't think snakes really need that. Well, you take a frozen rat and thaw it out. What nutritional value are we really losing? Or are we, honestly, or are we losing any?
Yeah, we'd have to analyze that, which to be honest, I'm a little bit of an enthusiast of reptile nutrition, and it really depends on the status of the rodent and how quickly it was frozen after being killed, and how it was killed will determine nutrition. A lot of people say that the duration it is spent in the freezer will decrease the nutritional value, which doesn't have a ton of truth to it. It just decreases not necessarily nutritional value, but the quality, I guess, of the rodent.
Yeah. Be like putting a steak in the freezer for a year.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah. So, but to your point, you're totally right. where snake nutrition is something that is completely overlooked in the hobby, because we're like, okay, we've got a rodent. They eat rodents in the wild. Let's give it a rodent. It's great. My snake is breeding. It's in a healthy body condition. But is it doing well nutritionally?
How do we know?
How do we know? We'd have to do a necropsy on the animal to determine that, and providing a natural rodent, or a rodent that these animals would be eating in the wild that is eating its natural diet, is a lot better than this farm-bred mouse that is morbidly obese from the pelleted diet it's been eating. And a lot of people don't look at that. And a lot of people also don't consider prey diversity when it comes to snakes either. They feed them these lab rats for its entire life, which is another discussion.
I see people that have that keep the dry marcon species, and they're always talking about, hey, I give my snakes fish, I give them chicken, I give them rodents. Well, let me ask a question in all seriousness. Let's use green tree pythons. They live in Indonesia. They eat birds. They eat rodents. They probably, as neonates, eat frogs and lizards. Mm-hmm. So why, and this is a conversation that we've had in our group, bilineata being the best one. Cody's produced bilineata. They're a pain in the butt. 16 babies, you're trying to you're force feeding them or assist feeding them rat tails or rat feet because they won't take rodents, or you're getting them the sausage links and giving them those. This past year, Cody was out in the yard and caught a cricket frog. And he called me. He said, I'm just going to throw this cricket frog in here because I highly doubt it's going to take it, but I'm going to try it. He threw the cricket frog in there. That snake took the cricket frog.
Yep.
Immediately.
Yep. Yeah. We had a – go ahead. No. I was going to say our male, we never got eating. We were force feeding him for 6 years. And then once – literally we'd pull him out, pin him in some foam, force feed him a pinky mouse or fuzzy mouse, good to go. We were doing that once every 3 weeks, once a month, whatever. And then we finally were able to get a source of frozen anoles.
Okay.
And we're like, you know what? Let's give this a go. Took one of those frozen anoles, blended it up, which is like super weird.
Yeah, but it's what we do.
Yep. Blended it up. We soaked that pinky mouse in it for like 15 minutes. Struck at it, took it immediately. And we're like, 6 years of our life.
And that's exactly, listen, if the first time, Cody was elated. I've never heard somebody so excited in their life. He's like, damn, if I would have known this. So it's the same thing with the Arifer. Give them what they eat in the wild. And today he posted a video in our group chat. One of the Arifer took a pinky mouse. So, it's nice. Like sooner or later they'll change over, but you know what? These little tiny, like you said, these little tiny babies that you're trying to pin and grab and stick, a rat tail or a rat foot or something. And I tell people this and they're like, ugh. And it's like, well, listen, they eat bugs and little ass, who knows what they eat in the wild. But when we start looking at the diversity of what we're feeding everything, it's hard to believe that, back to the green tree pythons, babies notoriously hard. I've heard people say, they're jumping for joy. Oh, I just produced 20, baby green tree pythons, and 2 months later they're like, yeah, I got one left. All of them died.
Yep.
I'm like, why'd they all die?
Good luck.
Because they don't eat.
Yeah.
And Cody said the same thing. He's like, I bet you if you threw frogs in there, they would immediately eat and you would have no problems. And it's like, but what if you had a nutritional supplement that you could give to them as babies and kickstart their system, and once they start to get that nutrient, maybe that would turn that feed on. And again, like you said, there's got to be studies done, and but you hear about people losing animals because they don't eat, and why aren't they eating? What are you doing as a keeper that could be preventing them from thriving? Mm-hmm. You said before that we keep snakes and we breed them. Is that really the measurement of I'm keeping it correctly? Or is that just the measurement of I've kept this animal, it understands that I'm in captivity, Or does it understand that and it knows I have to produce, I have to lay eggs, I have to have babies, I have to do this, I have to keep the species going, I have to do this.
Yeah.
So, or is it, hey, this is good enough? And I'm leaning more towards the side of we are doing just enough to provide them with a environment that they will reproduce in.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it could be a lot better.
Yeah. I mean, I always get so frustrated when people use reproduction as a evaluation of welfare. They're like, oh, it breeds, it must be doing fine. And I always like using the analogy, think about yourself in quarantine right now, sitting at home, nothing available. I bet you $20 if I brought a smoking hot chica over, you'd breed her as well.
Yep. And that's exactly. And that's, again, part of, the conversations you have with people that have been in the industry for a long time, like Ron St. Pierre. You look at Corey from Toothless Reptiles. Corey's produced some amazing water monitors. And if you've seen his facility now, what he's doing for those animals, I don't even understand how it's unreal. Mm-hmm. And when you start giving them really what they want and what they need, you start to see just how much maybe we've been failing some of them. Mm-hmm. And it's exciting to see some of the new things. It's exciting to talk to people like you that, you have that passion on both sides of it. And I know there's keepers out there that work in zoos that don't feel that people should keep animals, reptiles. And hey, you know what? I always say this, you're right. I think it takes a special person to keep an animal like that. Mm-hmm. And I think that if you have the passion and the thought process behind, I'm going to do this to provide my animals with the best, that it's better than, hey, I have a wall that's 12 feet long and 8 feet tall. I can keep 50 tubs in that and I can make all these babies and make all this money. And yeah. I'll be honest with you, 5 years ago, that was me. It was 100%.
Same.
It was 100%. And now I'm to the point where I'm like, hey, you know what? I have, I think 12 ball pythons and not one of them is the same.
Yeah.
Which is cool because it's like, and we've always said this, everybody's got this selective breeding and I'm going to get that. I don't care. I just want to see cool babies. I love baby snakes. I think it's cool to see that little head sticking out. It's interesting. It's fun. So, there's so much that we have. I think that we still have to learn. And supplements, lighting, regular, like LED lighting. That's a great study. I can't wait to hear more about it because we have a cool Euromastic here from it's a Moroccan.
Nice.
My son got it from one of the local stores out here that we know that they deal strictly in reptiles, and it's an awesome lizard. But you're right, it comes out and it basks, and if you look at it, it runs right back in the cave.
Oh yeah, for sure.
All you gotta do is look at it. He's like, oh, yep, I'm out.
That's well, I can't say it's all Euromastics, but that's very typical Euromastics behavior.
Yeah. So, but like building the enclosures, and we said it when we did the Pricey Eye the 2 Pricey Eye enclosures. It was, the journey was so much better than the end. Mm-hmm. Designing and painting and making sure it looked like we had rattlesnake books with their habitat, so Cody was painting to make sure, and I was designing rocks that looked the same as the book. And, I think that's the most fun.
Yeah.
And the most
I totally agree with you.
Yeah. So do you guys do all your own builds, or do you have people that come in?
Nope. We do it all ourselves. Yep. Yeah. We have a workshop down in our basement. We'll even build our own enclosures. Okay. I've done, some exhibits with the foam and the rock work and all that jazz. I would like to get into, kind of what Clyde Peeling does. I don't know if you're familiar with their facility.
Yeah, we've been there.
Have you? Yeah. I'd like to do, the actual rock work. I'd love to learn into that, but yeah, we do it all ourselves. So we're kind of making the transition, and that's mainly because we're a super old building. Our building opened in '93, and we're still rocking some enclosures that are believe they're Larson's exhibits. I don't know if you're
I
familiar
don't
with
even
them.
know.
They were the top of the line exhibits back in the 80s. I'll tell you. They're fiberglass, 600-pound enclosures.
Oh.
Yeah,
Oh.
they're horrible things. But now we're phasing those out, moving into expanded PVC, and that's where we have more of an opportunity to work with it and fabricating and mounting stuff to it.
Yep.
But yeah, so that's like I mentioned, it's one of my passions is doing that. I love the construction aspect of it. Like you said, I mean, the journey's so much fun.
Cody hates my DIY side. I love DIY.
I mean, love it.
He hates it. He's like, damn, just go buy a light. And I'm like, no, so the place that I work at, part of our warehouse, we were storing Microsoft's like a whole stage, like when they do like a product release, the whole stage, like all the pieces that are hung up, all these LEDs.
Oh, wow.
So I have a box of LED lights. There's 5 LED lights per strip. It's 14 inches long. There's 7K worth of light. I probably have 500 of them.
Oh my gosh. That's awesome.
At one point, I had a stack of acrylic. Some of it was 5/8 inches thick.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the guys were like, "We're throwing this out." I'm like, "No, you're not."
No way.
He was like, "I could set it in the back of your van on the forklift." I'm like, "Do it." He set it in there. My van was like, it's so heavy.
That's awesome.
But it's so much fun to do that stuff. And I know there's definitely a place at a time for some of it. Like I've taken the Tough Tote storage boxes from Home Depot, and I build a frame out of it's a pine, but it's what's that? Primed. It's like a white.
Oh, yeah.
So cut that, put sliding glass track in, and now you have for their large 55 gallon box, it's 42 inches by 20 inches by 20 inches roughly. And it costs to put the glass, the track, the wood, and the cage and LED lights, it costs less than $50. And it's a plastic cage.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And if you want to spend $60, you can actually buy that same trim and expanded PVC. And now you've got an all plastic cage that for less than $100 that you're not going to find anywhere else.
That's awesome.
So easy to make. I've got a dozen of them.
Really?
All of my ball python cages are 27-gallon Tough Totes that are built the exact same way, and they're just stacked in walls of 4, and all the ball pythons have their own enclosure.
Oh, that's awesome.
We don't have any adult ball pythons. Everybody's still grow up. I think the biggest one we have is probably 1,000 grams. So,
okay, gotcha.
But it makes it so much more interesting and so much more fun to do a build like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's so
much more rewarding.
Exactly. And when people come over and they see it, and they're like, "Huh, what is that?" And it's like, "Is that a storage tote?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah." Yeah. So, it's fun. And again, I think when we talked earlier about the laws and the rules and what people are doing, I think that's if people can get excited about doing stuff like this, then all this stuff will fall by the wayside, and the bad stuff won't be as bad. Mm-hmm. So
passionate people are going to save this hobby.
Yeah. And that's it. And, like I said, I mean, you work with some cool species, on the zoo side, but you also have cool stuff at home. So, which I definitely applaud you for, because I know I've talked to other zookeeper people. They're like, I don't keep any animals at home. Yeah. They're like, are you crazy?
Yeah. Not many people do.
All day.
Yeah. Which it's a lot of work. I used to also, as you're probably familiar, zookeepers don't make that much money. I had a kid recently, and so I was also working at a pet store, a local reptile shop, and so I'd spend, I'm working 4 10s right now, so I'd spend 10 hours at the zoo, I'd spend 4 hours at the reptile shop, and then I'm coming home and feed my animals. So literally 6 days a week was over 14 hours of reptile husbandry. Yeah, and it got a little overwhelming, to be honest, but I mean, I love it. I love it.
Yeah, and that's great. And again, back to, the passion, the people, somebody with passion. One of the things that I am extremely passionate about is venomous. But one of the things that really bothers me here in Florida is the free handling groups, and
Dude,
we
yeah.
we beat this stuff up and we talk about it constantly. And you obviously, again, back to the Florida stuff that just went on. Well, yesterday morning, here comes a post on Instagram, and Tyler Nolan has a Komodo Island blue Enceladus wrapped around a baby that he just produced, wrapped around his nubby finger from the king cobra bite that he took in 2016 at Tom Crutchfield's. I took that personally as a FU to all of us that keep these animals, because those are pictures that will come back to burn us at the end of the day. I asked Cody the significance of the venom for those, and he said, while it probably wouldn't kill you unless you had a reaction, it will kill tissue and be a bad bite.
Oh yeah.
It's a hot snake. You may not die from it, but it's a viperidae bite. It's gonna eat up flesh, and if it bites that nub finger that already has severe damage from a cobra bite, it's only going to be worse. And those are the things that we look at being bad. But I had Stephen Cush on from Cold Blooded Cafe and Reptech. He worked with Forrest, and he's managing the business now with Desiree. And one of the things that Stephen said, and for being young, this is just tremendous, is if enough of us good people put out good content, those bad people that put out bad content will fade away sooner or later. If we overwhelm that with good stuff and not focusing on the negative and just post things doing it right, then, you're not going to see that. I mean, Cody doesn't post videos publicly. He has a Patreon for the Reptile Preservation Institute, which is based out of Melrose, Florida, and shameless plug. And when we did the black mambas, when they all hatched, they were in the egg container, and he set those into the trash can, and with gloves on, he's got the Venom Defender gloves, popped the lid off, popped it off with the hooks, and then he hooked each of the babies out of there. He could have used the gloves and just grabbed them and put them in there. I mean, you could have done that. I've seen, small fang snakes grab those gloves. They don't go through. But to be professional and do it the right way and not to take any risks, those snakes just hatched. They were, it was cool because they were like little king snakes. Now, 2 weeks later, after they went through their first shed, not anymore. I opened up the first box, and that snake came straight out like a rocket ship.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, baby black mambas, no joke. And they're so hard to hook because they're so small that they're a handful.
Yeah.
So, but those are parts of the process that people need to see more of, instead of the dumb look at my snake wrapped around my finger crap.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, irresponsible venomous keepers drive me nuts. Absolutely nuts. I'm so against the free handling, and what it really kind of hit home for me. When was this? Back in 2016, 2017. We had an experience where there was a venomous keeper out in, I think it was Arizona or New Mexico, that was free handling his monocled cobra, right? And ended up getting bit. And we were the only facility that had monocled cobra antivenom within the closest vicinity that could save this gentleman's life, right? And so we actually sent him our monocled cobra antivenom. Ended up saving the guy's life, right? Super cool success story. Hooray for him. Well, now I'm short monocled cobra antivenom.
Yep.
So if I get bit, I might die. And that is not cool. And I try to share that story with everyone because for all those people that are keeping hot out there and don't have access to anti-venom or a plan for when they get bit, it's situations like that where you're taking my anti-venom and then you're putting my life at risk. And I'm not necessarily willing to do that.
So for those that don't know, and I'm going to share this on here with you because that is right there is the prime example of what could potentially happen if somebody's free handling and they take a bite. We just had a bite a couple weeks ago here in Florida. A gentleman was free handling an annulifera and took a bite in the bicep. That's a bad bite. An Egyptian cobra, snouted cobra, that's horrible. I would not want to be in that situation. Now that this individual is okay, everything's fine. But here's the deal. You're getting antivenom from somewhere else now. You're taking somebody's stock of antivenom. For those that don't know, go on to Kentucky Reptile Zoo's website. Kristen has a fantastic guide to getting your IND, which is your experimental drug license.
Yep.
I don't care what you say. The FDA wants us to have this permit. Is it a pain in the ass? Yes, it is. It's not easy. Nothing worth anything in life is easy. It's all going to be difficult. However, that's part of our plan with our group from the RPI is we are all getting our IND to buy our own antivenom for the species that we keep.
That's
because
awesome.
We don't want to take away from somebody like yourself when, granted, we're not free handling and doing anything, but accidents happen.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's always a possibility. So for those that don't know how to do it, reach out, get a hold of one of us, and we'll help because at the end of the day, I don't want to hear that something bad happened to you because this guy took antivenom that you should have had, and nor does your family.
Yep.
So we don't realize just how bad it is. Let's forget the aspect of the public doesn't understand this stuff. Mm-hmm. So I always tell people it's like on my dresser over there, I have a 9mm. If you came into my house and you were playing around with it, would you put it to your head and pull the trigger? God, I hope not, because it's loaded. There's a round in the chamber. You'll die. But that's the same thing. Am I not right with a venomous snake? You may get away with it here and there, but sooner or later, that snake isn't bonded with you. It's not a dog. It's not a cat. It's not a bird. Yep. It's an animal that is food focused and task oriented. And it may be okay with it, but one day it's going to catch a movement out of the corner of its eyes and whack. You're going to get whacked and you're going to go, oh my God, it's never done that before. Well, guess what? It only takes one.
Only takes one.
Yeah. I always tell Cody when I worked the baby black mambas, I said, they black mamba'd today. They black mamba'd, because I've seen him work some of those big mambas and you would scratch your head and go, is that a king snake?
Yeah.
What? I mean, I watch him feed off of 4-foot tongs and they'll come up and kind of poke it with their nose and they'll just grab it nonchalantly and they'll work it down like, I'm not crazy. I'm not going to go nuts. You're feeding me and I'm good. Yeah. But there's always that instance where, that animal's just not having it. And we suffer for that. And like you said, people don't realize just how dangerous that can be. Yep. The flip side of that too, with COVID, what if you need to be on a ventilator? What if there's no ventilators in the hospital you go to? Mm-hmm. You're in trouble.
Yeah. We called the hospital that we, go to, or were to go to if we had a bite, because we had that same concern. We're like, hey, look, are you gonna, if I get bit by a venomous snake tomorrow, are you gonna have available space for me? Are you gonna have a ventilator for me? And luckily they said yes. We have a designated ward for you guys, which I'm like, a little suspect, awesome. But cool. Yeah. All right. Because that was a huge concern. And during I like to say the peak of COVID, when we had all the shutdowns and everything, there really wasn't the peak, but during that time, I decreased the feeding frequencies of my snakes. I reduced the amount of interactions I had with my snakes because I'm like, I'm not willing to, I put my life at risk when I handle these snakes. I'm not going to put it at more risk because the hospitals are loaded, But that's the way you
Exactly.
got to think. When you have venomous, you are putting your life at risk on a daily basis when you interact with these animals. You need to be smart. You need to think about every possible thing that can go wrong and do everything you can to avoid those possible
Yep.
things.
And here in Florida, we have the benefit of having arguably one of the best ER doctors in the world in Ben
Yeah.
Abo. So
Yeah.
from Venom 1 and Venom 2. So, Ben is amazing. I met Ben through Cody. So now, I've been out to dinner with him. He is absolutely fantastic.
That's awesome.
So if you're keeping venomous, having bite protocols, having a plan, walking through that stuff, I have a wife and kids. My kids are all old enough now, and this was part of, me wanting to keep venomous. I would never keep it until I knew my kids could differentiate the difference between a ball python and a gaboon viper. What is the difference? So my youngest son is going to be 16 in March. So I feel that he knows more than some keepers out there because he's been around and doing this with me since he was little. I just saw a picture pop up on one of my feeds the other day from a long time ago. That was him at like 2 or 3 years old with a ball python over his shoulder. So these guys have always been a part of all this stuff. So if you look at keeping venomous, you should have a family plan. Not just a plan for the hospital, but, God forbid you take a bite. Is my wife going to panic? Are the boys going to panic? Everybody needs to be on the same page. And, having anti-venom available is a big deal. And Nate from M Toxin was also on a couple weeks ago, and we talked about his black mamba bite. And that's scary. To have milked a snake 3 times and just get a scratch on your finger and be 10 minutes from the hospital. And he said all of his people are trained. They have a protocol and they can administer. They have anti-venom on site. They can administer right then. And I said, no, it's no big deal. I feel fine. Let's just go to the emergency room just in case. He said by the time he got to the emergency room, 10 minutes later, his eyes were messed up. His lost function in his tongue. He could taste the metal. And the doctor told him a few more minutes and you'd have been in some serious, serious trouble. Yeah. And that was from a scratch.
Wow.
So, 7 hours later, he's out of the hospital because he has his own anti-venom. He's out of the hospital and life is good the next day. He's back to work like nothing. So which is amazing.
Yeah.
And we look at that and we say, this is the way I would put it to somebody when they say, well, is all that paperwork worth it? If I had to do 100 hours worth of paperwork, is it worth, if I were to come home from work and take a bite from something, me being back to work the next day? Yeah. It's worth it.
I think your life is worth it.
Yeah. And it's insane. I mean, and I'm sure that's something you guys talk about, safety protocols. I'm sure you guys go through safety drills.
We do.
What kind of drills do you guys do?
Yeah. So in order for us, let me back up here. Within our building, every single person within our building is venomous certified. Okay. You have to be. It's one of the requirements for our building. We currently have 9 zookeepers. And in order to work venomous within our building, we have to have 3 additional people within the building. Doesn't matter where they're at within the building, they just have to be in the building. And so on our kitchen door, and the kitchen's kind of the main hub for the building, we have this in-out board with everybody's names on it, and then we have magnets, and you slide your magnet in if you're in the building, you slide it out if you're out of the building. And then we have hot tags that we put up if we're working venomous, all right? And if there's a total of 4 people in the building with me working venomous, I put my hot tag up. That means that those other 3 keepers cannot leave until I'm done working hot. Okay. And so in the case if there was a bite, we have a first responder, second responder, and a third responder. First responder's job is just to pretty much care to the patient. They are first making sure the snake is secure. If it's not secure, they are securing the snake, and the second responder then becomes the first responder. But if the snake is secured, they are, making sure that the bite tag is on, which we have a bite tag on every single enclosure that houses venomous snakes, has a little clip on it. If you were to get bit, you take that bite tag, clip it to your clothing, just in case you pass out. We know
that's a great idea.
bit by. It tells you common name, scientific name, and which antivenom to administer on every bite tag.
I like that.
Yeah, very cool. But yeah, so we make sure that that is attached to the person. We also make sure that, the person is sitting down, ask them how they're feeling, yada, yada, yada. If they're bit on the hand, we make sure that all jewelry, rings, watches, everything is removed. And then depending on the type of bite, we will do, the medical procedure required, I guess. Not really medical procedure, but
triage.
Exactly. Yeah. So if it's a elapid bite, we actually do a Sutherland wrap. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but
no.
So pretty much what it is, it's a wrap. I recommend looking into it. It's very interesting. But pretty much what it does is you use an ace bandage and you wrap the area where you were bitten pretty tightly. And the concept behind it is that it's actually restricting the lymph nodes because a lapid venom kind of travels through the lymphatic system. And so it restricts that to lessen the progression of the venom going through your system. And there's actually been some cases where people have used the Sutherland wrap, gone to the hospital, and the doctors have removed the Sutherland wrap, and the person immediately passes out right after it being removed, because then they get this rush of the venom flowing through their system. So kind of interesting, but yeah. So for an elapid bite, we administer the Sutherland wrap. For any sort of hemotoxic bite, viper, vipera, whatever, we just put the affected area in a sling. We used to apply an ace bandage more just so to pretty much, here's the red flag of where the person was bitten, to eliminate all confusion. And so we now, assuming that the bite was taking place in a hand, which it most likely will be, we put that arm in a sling just to, again, notify that person was bitten in this arm. There's no confusion. After that, the first responder is pretty much just running the show, making sure that the second and third responder are doing whatever they need. And so for the second responder, it is their job to first make all the phone calls. They are calling 911. They are calling poison control. They are calling the hospital to let the hospital know that there's been a venomous snake bite at Denver Zoo, and we are transporting someone via an ambulance to that hospital. We also then call, our supervisor, let them know if they're not there, but let them know that there's been a venomous snake bite, yada, yada, yada. That person is then, the second responder then retrieves the antivenom from our antivenom cooler, retrieves the wheelchair, because we put every snake bite victim in a wheelchair, and then escort them to the back gate of our building where we are meeting the ambulance. The third responder's job, it's very, very simple job, but their job is just to call a security supervisor to let them know that there is an ambulance coming to the zoo, and they need to escort that ambulance to gate 11, the gate that is behind our building. If they cannot contact a security supervisor, they are sprinting down to the front gate or grabbing a cart and driving it down to the front gate and escorting that ambulance themselves. So.
And those are, these are the things. So I was a volunteer firefighter in New York State for right around 15 years. And as a first responder, and a reptile keeper, I would always talk to our guys about, hey, you never know who's going to have something, what it's going to be, how bad it could be. We always laughed and joked that we knew guys in like downtown Buffalo that kept venomous snakes. And I was like, man, we knew this guy, his name was Tony. What if there was a fire there? First of all, he's got a 6.5-foot alligator that lives in his bathroom named Albert. And Albert was awesome. But if I'm on my hands and knees and it's all smoky and I'm crawling and I bump into Albert, I'm probably going to crap my pants and just pass out. And then the next guy's going to be on top. He's going to do the same thing. So, we always talked about, what do we do as a first responder? Do you guys include, during some of your drills, do you ever include first responders and bring them in?
We do. We've actually done it 3 or 4 times since I've been at
Awesome.
Denver Zoo, where we've had, EMTs, EMS, all, and first responders come and observe a drill, and then we talk through it. But yeah, we've included them several times, which is it's nice to hear their aspect of it.
Yeah, because as a first responder, if I didn't know anything about reptiles, my first question is obviously going to be, where is this thing?
Yeah,
Do we got to worry about it? No, of course
Yep.
you don't. That's why these guys are here. And, we've talked about it at the RPI. They know because it's a small town, they know all the firemen, and the firemen all know that they have all this stuff, which is super cool. But we've always talked about getting Ben up here to do a full-blown, envenomation type fire drill, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I've always told Cody it's a good idea if Ben is there to direct the firemen as to what to do, we don't have to worry about that part. It would be a great tool to film and be able to keep that to show new interns coming in. This is the procedure. This is what we do. And we have a procedure. We have, I keep my book of bite protocols right here by my bed. We don't have any venomous here right now, but I have my book that I got to put everything in place that I need when we're purchasing a home. So once we move in the next, couple months, then that's when we'll get our permit. And, I have my bite protocols. In the front of my bite protocols, I have phone numbers to poison control, Ben, Cody. We have a procedure that, me and my wife have talked about that'll be, if I get bitten, I'll secure the animal. And, the boys whoever's here with me, we will never handle animals when it's just me by myself. There will always be somebody else in the house.
That's awesome.
They don't necessarily have to be in the room. We did that when we had retics. At no point did I ever work an animal when nobody was home.
Yeah.
Somebody always had to be in the house. That's it. It didn't matter if it was, even if it was just my daughter, and she would have nothing to do with the big snakes. She loves ball pythons and loves snakes, but the big snakes were just too much for her. But she always said, what do I do? And I said, well, this is the drill. Let's walk through this. I open the cage up. The big one comes out, Persephone comes out, grabs me and wraps me up. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to get me some sort of knife, something that I can, whatever I have to do to get out of that situation. And
that's our policy too.
Yeah. I mean, that's, you have to be safe. So, having a bite protocol, having procedures, fire drills, talking with if you have venomous, go talk to your ER doctor. Hey, this is the species list. I have a species list for Cody's, so I have a whole list of animals that he has there, but I will have that same list. But I love the idea of a tag that has that information on it. That's a great idea. It makes things so much easier.
Yeah.
So
and it's really cool too, because we actually have instead of writing, I mean, we have on there which antivenom it requires. But we also put a number that coordinates to the box on the antivenom. So for Bioclone Tri or whatever, it's number 14. And so on the tag it says number 14, and then it's labeled on the box number 14. And so I don't have to remember, I need green pit viper polyvalent. I just need number 5.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a lot easier to remember.
Yeah, keep it simple. Right?
Yeah.
Just keep it simple. And those are the things that I think a lot of people don't understand. And this is why this conversation is so cool, because people are going to get to watch this and hear, oh, wow, I didn't realize that, there's a whole set of protocols, because people don't really know that. And the non-reptile keeping people, I love going to zoos. And, we love listening to people outside of that, that aren't zoo people saying, oh my God, look at this corn snake. How could anybody keep that? And it's it's a corn snake.
Yeah.
But when you see these animals and part of what we're doing at the RPI right now is we've just taken on the endeavor of putting in croc pens. So Cody has his hours in the state of Florida for Komodo. So these are all things that have been added, but we are holding and babysitting, I think you would call it babysitting, a 11-foot alligator for somebody. and then Cody has 6 roughly 30 to 36 inch Morlet's Crocs from I think they're from
nice.
Dallas World Aquarium, and dude, they're so cool. But these are all things like Cody's worked with every species of crocodilian through the farm, and you know it's a fantastic endeavor to learn from. But I love being able to tell people how cool these animals really are.
Oh gosh,
You can see it in a zoo setting, but when you live it, it's completely different, right? Is that the best way to put it?
Oh,
so
yeah.
It's fun to talk to friends that don't do reptiles and just show the passion. And you know, I always tell everybody that I talk to the same story. I work with a gentleman. Daryl's a very good friend of mine. He was in the Navy and in the Air Force. He's awesome, but he is afraid of snakes. And every snake is a European death tree viper. Everything, doesn't matter what it is, that's what he calls them. So nice. He asked me one time about his daughter getting a chameleon, and I told him no. You know, that's not no
worst choice.
Yeah, I said I have a bearded dragon. You know, we've been looking to place him somewhere else, so I will give you the cage and everything. Just take it, and she will love it. So this bearded dragon is in the lap of luxury.
No, that's awesome.
Everything he could ever want. But now you take this individual who told me right from the start, if you pull out a snake, I will shoot it, and then I will shoot you. And I'm like, okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
So take him now. He comes to my house and holds a ball python. And
no
says,
way.
This isn't bad. Exactly.
That's awesome.
Somebody that you can bring in. And granted, they may not ever buy that animal or buy one of them, but they look at it and say, hey, you know what? All these years I've been saying this, I was really wrong. It's really not that bad, but I'm not, you know, to each their own.
Yeah.
So if we can just continue to do that with people, I think we'll be good.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Totally agree with you.
And you guys in the zoo field are the first line, honestly, the first line of defense in that, because that's where the majority of people are going to see this stuff. Very few people are going to see this stuff at my house. You know, they're going to go to the zoo and they're going to see this and they're going to get that fantastic experience of man, look at this enclosure. You know, obviously they know it's not the wild. They know somebody built it, you know. So if I don't even like, how do you build an enclosure that not only is aesthetically pleasing for people to see, secure for the animal to make it feel safe, but also make the animal be seen? The last two is really, there's not a lot of crossover there. Like
there's not, and that's where basking spots. You know, if you have a true like heliothermic animal, basking spots are key. Putting them up front towards the glass is you know the trick. Also, you know, propping the enclosure. Whereas, you know, if you know anything about the natural history of the animal, you could say, okay, this is a perfect location where I know this animal is going to bask. Or, you know, priming the misting systems or locating the misting systems, because sometimes misting systems can get an animal to relocate itself. You know, if I can mist on an animal to get it to relocate itself to the focal point within the exhibit, you know, that I'm doing something right. So there's definitely some tricks of the trade to encourage these animals to be visible. But you're right. It is. Sometimes you get these animals that you're like, oh, these are a super cool species, and they just do not display well. You know, they do not display well, and you're just like, this sucks.
Yeah.
You know, like we just got in some Nephrurus Wheeler Isinctus, some banded knobtail geckos.
Okay.
And I went to my boss and I'm like, hey, look, like I would love to display these. And he's like, you know, they're not really the best display animals. And I'm like, just give me a chance. I've got an idea. I've got a plan. I know I can do it. But historically, you know, they've been poor display animals. But go ahead.
What about excavator clay and running a cave at the front of the cave so people can see into the cave, and then giving like that mound so if they're in the back, people can't see them? Maybe not great, but in the front when they go into that cave to hide, It's gonna, even another thing to do too, and we don't think about some of this stuff is even tinting that glass. So a tinted glass on the front with a cave there, it's going to be a little bit harder to see in, but the animal's not going to really see out as much either. So if you even just a slight bit of tint, stuff like that is cool to think about, if you really want to show something.
Well, that too, if you actually put the basking lights, it depends on the type of glass, but if you put the basking lights toward the front of the enclosure, kind of right next to the glass, it makes the glass reflective. So the animals can't see out. They just see themselves or see another, which they don't recognize themselves. They see another animal, which can be pros and cons, whatever, depending on the species. But it's funny too, how, a lot of my animals get so, desensitized to the public, because they get looked at all day, every day. The glass gets tapped on all day, every day. So these animals just sit there, they eat normally, they bask normally. But the second I open that door, the access door in the back, the animal's like, what the heck? What are you doing in here? And they're running all over the enclosure. They're freaking out. But I'm like, you got like 30 people on the other side of this glass looking at you. And I come through the other side and you freak out. So it's pretty funny that, sometimes you get these animals, you put them in an enclosure, they don't do what you want them to do, but then you give them a week, couple weeks, and then they're acclimated or habituated to being looked at all day and the public walking by, and then they're out and about. Like I just got earlier last year got a Fiji iguana, which I'm super pumped about. Yeah, he's an awesome individual. I've been really working with him and socializing him. But same deal. When I put him on exhibit, he hid in the back, did not want to be seen, and now he'll bask up front, and really has made an awesome display animal.
That's awesome. Hold on one second. What?
Yeah.
Soon. And they are. It's my daughter, and they are.
Oh, no worries.
They're so beautiful, and it's like, man, it's some of the animals that you get to see are just fantastic. And people don't realize just how truly beautiful they are. I mean, the Arifer that's right there, the bicolor, when you get in and really get to see them and see their eyes, and I'm sure Mangs are the same way, those colors, they're just so amazing. And, when you talk about, you see these animals a million times. People walk by them and they tap on the glass and the animals are like, yeah, whatever. It's the same way when we work stuff at the facility. You go and you pull an animal out and you think, man, I've seen other videos of these things in the wild. They're like hell on wheels. And Cody always tells me, he's like, they're used to this process. They know, they may not understand, but they know, oh, this guy's taking me out. The same thing Nate has said. I've heard Kristen and Jim talk about it. The animals know what's going on. They may not enjoy it, but they know this is quick, it's over with, and whatever. I'm not happy, but do your thing.
Yeah. So, I don't know if you know. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, you're good.
I would say I don't know if you know Terry Phillips up at Reptile Gardens, South Dakota.
That's one of Cody's mentors.
Oh, really? Yeah. So I had the opportunity to go get some venomous training from him back in 2018. Awesome guy. I love Terry. We've actually sent him a couple of Komodo dragons, which we're hoping he kind of returns the favor and sends us some like Parentes or something cool. But anyways, but yeah, he says the same thing. He handles his animals very frequently because he believes that they get habituated to it and they know what's going on. They know that, okay, this is not a negative experience. I can behave, whatnot. And so that was kind of my topic I wanted to bring up, I guess. Is it's interesting because in a zoo setting, a lot of facilities are moving more towards shift boxes to decrease the frequency that they need to handle the snake, which is good because it's safe. However, that one opportunity where you need to handle the snake because of medical procedure or whatnot, you're potentially creating a more risk, high risk situation because that animal is not habituated to being handled. Yep. So it's like, how do you weigh those risks? Whereas you're handling the animal more frequently to decrease risk, or you handle the less frequency to decrease risk, but both sides are also increasing risk. So it is a very interesting theory. And I'm more on the side of Terry and, your mentors that I think we should be handling these animals because it not only, increases our skill and knowledge of these animals' behaviors when we are handling them, gives us more exposure to it, but it also makes it a safer working experience when you are handling the snake. So
when you say that that's one of the things that Cody always in the very beginning told me. We want to go to shift boxes for everything, but you also want to have the working experience with the animal, because let's say you're in the Denver Zoo and something, God forbid, happens and the glass gets broken. Yeah. And now you have a Western green mamba flying down the hallway, but you've never worked that snake because you shift it, which is good. You shift it and it shifts, but you've never worked that snake. And I can tell you, my personal experience working some of these animals, if I've not ever worked them before without somebody backing me up, I would be petrified, because some of them are the Western greens. I've never had to work the adults. Now I've worked their babies and they're unreal. I've seen them do things that I scratch my head and go, I have no idea what just happened, but I managed to open a habitat rack system where they're in the Cambro tub so it's clear, pull that out, that snake levitated out of the box, went up onto the top of the rack, got up on top of something else, and you're like, it was that fast. It was a blink, and they were over your head. And it's like, how do you prepare yourself for that if you're constantly shifting an animal, which again is a fantastic idea, and I will have shifts for my animals that need them, but I still want to be able to work them for things like medical procedures and the emergency what ifs. People always tell me, when you get venomous snakes, let me know. We want to come over and see them. Well, that's fine. They'll never come out of the cage when somebody's here. That's just
which is so smart.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. You see some of the YouTube guys that come out to film and they want to take stuff out. And it's like, no, it's right there. Why do I need to take it out? If you want to see a snake that we can hold, go ahead and reach in and take the black-headed python out. Let me know how that works for you. Because those snakes are dicks.
Yeah, that's my Woma. Total dirtbag.
Yeah, and you take it out, and they're just like, everything is good. Then they kind of poke you a few times, and they're just like, and they grab you, and you're like, what's happening here? So, I mean, if you want to hold something like that, go ahead. There's Cebu pythons over there. Go ahead and grab one of them out. They're just as good.
Yeah.
So it's like you can do all this stuff and have fun and go see all these animals and enjoy it. But again, when you're working them, being safe is the primary, goal.
Priority number one.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen, we have a big Bothrops Asper, and
nice.
Is this one?
Yeah,
right
I see it. Yep.
And she's probably all of 7 feet.
Yeah.
She's big. And when you open that front opening cage up and you drop that door, you better be 5 feet back, because she comes right out. And always want food. She comes out, she goes back in, and then she's good. She knows, there was nothing there for me to eat. That was just that big fat guy coming to take me out again.
We have sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're good.
I keep interrupting you.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
We have. I was going to say we have Mujanai.
We have those two.
same deal. Freaking nightmares. We had a mite scare several years ago. And we had to go through a tube every snake, and it was my job to tube the Mujanai. And our male is, oh gosh, our male. I'm dancing around this snake, trying to get it in the tube. And I finally get a tube, and I look up, and the vets are like almost in tears, because they're just like, they're over there like panting, freaking out, because they're like, and I'm just over here, I'm like, whew. That was a tricky one.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's funny because I didn't start working the bigger Bothrops until probably about a year ago. And for the first year, I stayed away from them because this is my opinion, and other people can say what they want. If you ask Cody and anybody that I've worked with, when you're working venomous snakes, if you get to a certain point where, like if I was cleaning cages and I got to a point where I was like, you know what, my mind doesn't feel this, I'm done.
Yep.
Or I get to a cage where this animal doesn't look like it's acting normal, I would go get Cody and say, what do you want me to do? I don't really feel comfortable with this. And he would tell me, don't, just skip that one and let me know which ones you get done.
Yep.
But I didn't work the big Bothrops, not because I was afraid to, more out of respect for the animals. And we always worked them last. And it was like, you know what? I'm just not going to do it. And then finally, after a full year of being there every weekend and for all the big events, Cody was like, well, here, I'll have you go ahead and take out the Mougeny. And I'm like, all right. So I open the cage up, it does its normal thing. And now we take the tongs and we take the cork bark out, so that the cork bark's out of the way. And I'm trying to get her out with the hook, and I get her to come halfway out and she loop back and just keep around in a circle. And I wasn't getting frustrated, but it was starting to get to a point where I was like, Cody, maybe you should just do this. Cause he's like, listen, this is what I want you to do. You have the gloves on, get her head out. When she goes back in, just reach in gently, grab her tail, grab her and pull her out and aim her into the can. She'll go right in. So that was the first venomous snake that I ever tailed or even
really
near. Yeah.
Wow.
Cody was like, you've tailed the Annualifera. I'm like, nope, I've never had to. I've never had to do it. I used 2 L hooks and that's just the way that I was taught. Other people say, you use 2 hooks? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, how do you do that? And I'm like, well, it's easy. You'd like this.
Yep.
Like
I use 2 hooks for everything.
Yeah. And Cody was taught, one of Cody's mentors was Terry Phillip, and he uses L hooks. And I love L hooks.
Same.
I have a real hard time with a regular hook. And Cody's like, why are you having such a hard time with this? And I'm like, because I don't have an L hook. I'm really confused right now. This is cool. But that was my first time tailing a snake, and arguably one of the most dangerous snakes. I mean,
I was going to say, that's not in my opinion, that's not the tier 1 of, the starter snake to tail.
No, but you know what? I'll say this. And again, a testament to keepers, that animal never really shows any aggression other than that initial open of the door and is
food
there
response.
Food? Yeah, that food response. And that's just from us doing it the way that we do it. It's that, first of all, you're not going in there to screw around with the animal ever, So, and a lot of times, like when I clean and feed, I would take an animal out, clean the cage, and we pre-kill, everything is pre-killed. It gets put into a cooler, it gets euthanized with CO2. We don't feed anything live. The only things that would feed live are maybe a baby, something that needs, you just throw it in there and leave it alone. But we feed nothing live. So what I do is I clean the cage and I take the rat and set it in there. And then generally with the Bothrops, where we keep them level wise, all you got to do is open up the can and they'll come right up the side of the can and go right back into their cage.
Yeah.
So, and listen, I've seen them come straight up out of a full garbage can too. They're
for sure.
No joke.
For sure.
So, but I mean, this is what we do and this is why we love it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, but
100%.
Man, I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, anytime.
What I'll do is I'll link all of your information from Instagram and everything in there, Denver Zoo and all that. And I definitely want to get you back on again, and we'll talk to Cody because I'm sure he'll really like him and Terry are close. So
I would love to officially meet him. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. So again, thanks for coming on, man, and I will talk to you soon. I'll definitely keep in touch. I'll send you some pictures.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Awesome, man.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks for coming on. Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thanks for coming on, man.
Yep.